All right. Hi to those folks who are just joining. All right, we will start to kick things off for our session today. So welcome everybody to this Verge Net Zero session from disclosure to decarbonization. We're going to be with you for the next 45 minutes. We're going to start with a moderated discussion followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. So I really encourage you to use that chat function, submit your questions throughout, and we hope that this will be a lively and insightful discussion for you all. So to kick things off, I'll start with a brief introduction to who I am and who Edison Energy is. So first off, my name is Annabelle Stam, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's session. I am the Senior Director of Sustainability Strategy here at Edison Energy, and I bring 17 years experience advising companies on understanding sustainability risks and opportunities, building out strategies, and supporting successful implementation to achieve climate and business goals. So to answer all of your first question about Edison Energy, no, we are not a utility. It is a confusing name. We are an energy and sustainability advisory firm. And as an organization, we are truly driven by our mission, which is to create a sustainable, resilient, and equitable future. So we do that by working with organizations really all the way through, from establishing a strategy through to that successful implementation, bringing in expertise in climate strategy, energy optimization, clean energy advisory, and transportation electrification. So all the different solutions that will really enable companies to enact the different levers that will truly help them to decarbonize. I sometimes refer to us as full service decarbonization, if you like. We're a global organization. We have key locations in California, Boston, Amsterdam, and the UK, to name a few. And we're honored to partner with a number of leading organizations, including Bristol Myers Squibb, who we're very pleased to have join us today and is the real star of the show. So for the next 45 minutes, we're going to explore some of the challenges and opportunities that are facing organizations when it comes to decarbonization, and thinking about why an integrated approach that really has decarbonization as that North Star is really key to achieving business goals and sustainability ambitions. We are going to hear from a global Fortune 500 organization, Bristol Myers Squibb, on what it looks like to actually put this approach into practice. And we're going to learn how sustainability leaders, like much of you joining us today, can avoid roadblocks, engage key internal and external stakeholders, and really importantly, drive tangible impact for their businesses and help create a more sustainable world. So on that, I'm truly excited to welcome firstly Victoria Emmerich. Victoria is the Executive Director and Global Head of Corporate Sustainability Strategy and Operations from Bristol Myers Squibb. And my colleague, Trevor Anderson, who is a fantastic manager within the Edison Energy Sustainability Advisory practice. And he's also the project manager and advisor supporting Bristol Myers Squibb on their decarbonization journey. So thank you both for joining the session today. Let's kick things off with you, Victoria. Let's start by hearing how it is you find yourself on this screen today. What really led you into corporate sustainability? How did you get started? Tell us a bit about your background.
So thank you, Annabelle, Trevor, and the Edison team, and everyone who's on the call. I'm kind of excited to have the conversation, but really hear from the people on the call. I have a very interesting background. I'm not your normal person who's landed in the role that I'm in. I am a PhD biophysicist by training. I've spent 23 years in discovery research, the very beginning of research for the pharmaceutical industry. And over the years, I transitioned from being in laboratory research to laboratory operations and continuous improvement, both developing and implementing automation for transitioning. So change management, transitioning, two key phrases we'll probably hear today, from a software perspective. How do we operate differently and better? As I started to kind of feel a little stale in my role, this opportunity, I was working at Bristol Myers, the opportunity arose, the person preceding me retired, and I threw my hat in the ring. That was about 6.5 years ago. Certainly was the odd candidate out in the interview process, but having the experience of massive enterprise transformation projects, the change management approach, and understanding the culture and the science of the work we do was really critical, because sustainability is about a company's culture. It's about a company's strategy. It's about ensuring we can operate to meet our mission and our goal, in our case, to serve our patients, and with medicines well into the future. And so it kind of all came together in this really amazing role that I never predicted and could not be happier with.
That's really fascinating. And just touching upon some of the things that are so key there, sort of bringing in really understanding the business operations, that change management piece. Like you said, I think there are definitely key themes that you'll likely hear today. So thank you for sharing that. And Trevor, same question to you. I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and how you got into the world of sustainability consulting.
Yeah, thank you, Annabelle. Very happy to be here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. So my name is Trevor Anderson. Manager is my middle name, and manager is also my title. Here, manager with the sustainability team at Edison Energy. And as Annabelle had mentioned before, I'm leading our engagement with BMS on sustainability. So when Victoria was giving her intro, I actually had a chill go down my spine when you hear the word laboratory, because I have a biology degree, but lab work was never what I was interested in. And so if I back up a bit, I've been in this space now for over 12 years. I grew up with the love of nature and the outdoors, knowing that I would want to do something within environmental protection. I mean, we'd go to the beach, we'd go hiking, camping. Captain Planet was all the rage when I was growing up. And so knew for a while there I would want to be doing something that would benefit the environment, but did not know what exactly that job would entail or what that job could look like. And so I in the start of 2010s, I went into a master's program to earn a sustainability management degree. I was actually part of the inaugural class there, which goes to show you kind of how new of a field this was in the beginning of the 2010s. So just a little over 10 years ago now. And it was in this program where I learned about the nexus between the environment, society, and the economy, where you really could have it all. And so, while at the same time also really seeing climate change manifest as the mother of all environmental issues. I am from a beach town, dare I say, the Jersey Shore, but a small beach town from New Jersey. My hometown was impacted by Hurricane Sandy while I was earning my master's degree. And so I really did just have stars start to align at what a career could look like for me, where I could focus on climate action, combating climate change. And so, and wanted to do so from this corporate angle. I think with corporate sustainability, there just really is a strong business case to be made there, where we can, and a strong impact to be made. And touching on something else Victoria mentioned, right, with in regards to management, carbon is also something, you have to manage, right? You can't manage what you don't measure. And so when I started out my career, even after earning my degree, it was tough, tough days in the 2010s. There was a lot of walk and not as much, or sorry, the opposite, a lot of talk and not as much walk as you would like to see. And so rolling with my mantra of you can't manage what you don't measure, I took it upon myself to embark on opportunities where I could learn how to manage greenhouse gas, or how to measure greenhouse gas emissions. And then also importantly, how to measure greenhouse gas emission reductions from potential decarbonization or abatement strategies. And so I worked with environmental nonprofits, worked with public sector and with the private sector. And the last 4 years now in a row here have been working specifically on corporate climate advisory and strategy work. Again, very happy to be here today.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing that. I always love hearing the different paths that people took to get into this space, and it's really increasingly diversifying as well as more people move in, which we really need to see. And it's fascinating, Trevor, with you being the inaugural class going into sustainability. I'm not speaking for you here, Victoria, but certainly for myself, it didn't even exist as a degree at all when I was starting out. So let's move on to Bristol Myers Squibb now. It would be really great to hear from you, Victoria, if you could share where Bristol Myers Squibb is in its decarbonisation journey, and really sort of how and why did it get started? Where is it headed, and what are the steps that you're taking to get you there?
Sure. So I'm going to start a little bit in reverse order. How we got started, and Trevor brought up, the economic, environmental, and social commitments or responsibility and sustainability being a component of all those three. In 1987, BMS announced what was called the Pledge. And the Pledge was our commitment to environmental responsibility, social responsibility, and economic responsibility. So we were now ESG before ESG or EES was cool, before people were talking about it, before I was a part of the company, of course. And we announced and started publishing our first environmental results in 1992. And moving from there, our first sustainability or environmental commitments in 2000. So this has been a long journey. It's been a journey of continuous improvement that has been embedded within the company. And it goes all the way back to the 1800s when the company was founded. This intersection of environmental, social, or call it equity now, health equity, and commitments or obligations in a way that allows you to be an economically viable company. It's part of who we are. It's embedded in our corporate mission and values statement. Obviously, the world is changing, and continuous improvement and just doing better and that slow, consistent change is not enough. Everybody needs to move differently. We have to move differently. We have commitments to net zero scope 1, 2, and 3 by 2050. We have a zero waste to landfill commitment by 2040, which we expect to hit very soon. In 2025 or 2026 is our target, actually, which is exciting. We also have a target, which is challenging for us and for a lot of companies, which is a net neutral water by 2040. They all, to me, integrate into what is required to do decarbonization and manage it long term. It's not about hitting goals and then congratulations and moving on. It's about making decisions, driving the changes that allow us to manage those and incorporate those into how we operate, so they become part of our vernacular, so that we stop actually having to talk about sustainability or climate change. It's just part of what we do. And we're not as far on our journey as we'd like to be. And that has a little bit to do with COVID. It has a lot to do with a massive organizational change that happened January 1st of 2020. So we purchased a company called Celgene. It went live on January 1st of 2020. And that was the largest financial transaction in the pharmaceutical industry, in the history of the pharmaceutical industry. That was our priority for our company. Our priority was to keep our medicines, integrate these two companies, and keep medicines moving into the hands of our patients. And then COVID hit. And so we had to double down on our mission. And I think so that got us a little bit behind, but down as we go into the conversation, I think there's where we got behind was actually an opportunity, and Edison, you all were a key part of this, to leverage what nobody else really got that opportunity to take a pause and really think about what we were doing before we just started acting. And we're ready to really start to put the pedal to the metal now.
It's really interesting to hear that context. I mean, first of all, how many companies get to say that they started on sustainability in the 1800s? Love that. But I also appreciate your candor and kind of like the ups and downs and, actually how some of these things can be a bit of a blessing in disguise. Challenges become opportunities, but it's not a straight line. It's
Right.
it's a wiggly road as you operate your business and think about the different priorities and getting everything in order. So you talked a little bit about the work that you're doing there around setting targets and thinking about ESG more broadly and sustainability more broadly. Can you share a little bit more around some of the key drivers of this? There are particular stakeholders that are, I would say pushing or encouraging you forward, or other risks and opportunities that the organization is really seeing that it wants to respond to.
Yeah, I think what's interesting with our sector, unlike a lot of other sectors, we don't have tremendous pressure from the customers we serve. In that case, it's our patients. Bristol Myers Squibb is a company whose mission is, and our purpose is, to discover, develop, and innovate on medicines that help patients prevail with serious diseases. If you don't know us, you're good. I'll be fair. We make life-saving medicines, and in that case, patients don't choose us over someone else because their lives are at risk. So we hold that pressure comes in from internally more than it does from the external environment to do the right thing, to do right by our patients, and to track and manage the intersection of climate and human health, because we can't serve our patients if we are not serving the reduction of the impact of climate change onto people, onto human health, which is the World Health Organization's number one threat to human health is climate change. And the last data I pulled was 2018 data that I think it was 9 million people around the world died from the effects of breathing air contaminated by the use of fossil fuels. And 27% of those people, of those 9 million people, died from lung diseases, lung cancers, 24% from cardiovascular. And our two biggest areas of focus are in lung cancers and other cancers and immunological oncology, and in cardiovascular. And they have been for a very long time. So that intersection of why climate change and the impact of climate change has always been aligned to our corporate strategy, to our mission, to our purpose, to our values. So I think, as the external world is putting pressure on us, good. That's important because, that's helpful to get it. Our patients are putting pressure on us now, which is good. Our employees are putting pressure on us, which is really important. As we talked about earlier, we're of different generations of when we started work, or where we were when this change or this awareness and this awakening really became strong. And what we see, I think we all see, is that the attraction and retention of critical talent requires that we have strong commitments and actions, not just words, as Trevor said, but we are following through with our actions to sustainability, because we live and breathe by innovation, and innovation requires the best talent we can get.
That intersection between climate and human health is so important. I feel like, coming back to the pathways of what got people into sustainability, there can kind of be two routes, not necessarily either or, but I feel like most people are either driven by the human side or kind of the animal and environment side. So Trevor spoke to some of that before. But yeah, that intersection between climate and human health is so significant. And as somebody who has two little ones who suffer quite significantly from lung issues, which was happened a long time after I got into sustainability, it's something that's very near and dear to my heart. So Victoria, I have one more follow-on question from you. Some of what you were sharing there about sort of where Bristol Myers Squibb is now and sort of where it's going. And you spoke a little bit about the work that you've been doing around setting targets and some of the, the disruptions that have come up during that time with like COVID and integration and all these other things. It would be, are there other examples of obstacles that you can share that really proved challenging, but you were able to navigate them and overcome them as you sort of weave this winding path?
Yeah, actually, a really good one, I think we're going to talk about this as well, is expectations. And how do you prioritize the work that needs to be done when resources are becoming limited, when people resources, financial resources are becoming limited? How do you justify this work in a way that a board or a leadership team and the employees? So you've got layers of different expectations or different approaches to making these commitments and following through that are really important to address. And one of the things, being a scientist, and Trevor's been a critical part of this with us, is data-driven decision making versus emotional. Sustainability can be very emotional for people, and we get it. I mean, we're all in it. We all are committed to this intellectually and emotionally, but decisions we're now a Fortune 100 company, so a decision at our level is data-driven. And it's got to be clear and it's got to be understandable. And it isn't necessarily about always doing something because it's the right thing to do. And I say that differently from, there's an absolute component of that. And I call those, that's what I call activity engagements, the engagements of our employees, the continuous improvement efforts. Those are the constant efforts and constant engagements that have to go on. That work is not fully separate, but it is distinct from decarbonizing pharmaceutical manufacturing facilities, which are highly regulated. And you can't take them offline. You can't just go in and make changes. We have to have a very strong plan for that. We have to know where we're going to focus, heat maps, if you will. Where do we attack first? How do we plan for that? And deriving that from a data perspective of how we're going to measure the impact. And so ROI is obviously return on investment, which is, of course, critical. I view it as ROI, risk of inaction as well. So when you take both the risk of not doing it and the cost of doing different options, bringing those together with data allows us to prioritize. It goes back to, how do you eat the elephant? And, you say one bite at a time, and that's great. But you look at this, it can be very overwhelming to where do you even start? And narrowing down, and the data analytics that have come through the process of this partnership have allowed us on all fronts, from our facility manufacturing operations, our central utility plants, our approaches to renewable electricity, renewable energy, to waste management, how we're addressing water, and also how we're engaging our suppliers. Very data-driven, not just go out and figure it out, but very focused. The roadmaps are very discrete and defined, yet we give freedom to the organization as a whole, and the individuals in the organization, and the departments and divisions within our organization, we're about 34,000 worldwide, of, what can you do in your site, in your work, in your daily actions that can move and drive move us into a more sustainable culture and a sustainable way of operating.
That's really insightful. And I think it also sort of speaks to the value that you brought into the organization by having that understanding of the business and of the culture, and it really being a data-led, science-based organization. And that's something that we very strongly agree with when it comes to sustainability. It needs to be rooted in science and facts and data-driven to really make sure that you're targeting your resources as effectively as you possibly can. But what I sometimes find in working within the sustainability space is we often have to be translators. And with some organizations, we find we have to take that data and try and move away from the brain and a little bit more into the heart and like thinking of ways to be able to meet different function groups within the organization where they're at. So I feel you were really touching upon some of the things there, kind of what sets up a successful sustainability program around sort of data and cross-functional collaboration and things like that there. Maybe I'll segue on to Trevor and see if what you consider, like what would you consider to be some of the key factors of a successful sustainability strategy?
Yeah, thanks, Annabelle. Absolutely happy to. And there's a lot to build off from and or play into what Victoria was speaking to just before. So I think for me, from what I found, it's really important to have that internal buy-in. So as the advisor, coming on and work with a partner who already has that internal buy-in or continues to strive to get that internal buy-in within their organization is so key to keep things moving smoothly. So like when we started our engagement with BMS, I think, Victoria, you had just committed to, science-based targets, right? Like, and then here we come in to help get you to how are you going to now set those targets. But we didn't have to have that uphill battle to make the case to even commit in the first place. You had already done that hard work yourself. And so knowing that we were going to embark on this journey on helping you set your science-based targets we were already off to a great start, great positioning there. And as you mentioned before too, you are an organization that has sustainability, has climate closely, embedded in your roots. And so if it's already there in the culture, you're off to a great start there. If it's not quite yet embedded into your culture, I think making the business case for climate action is becoming all the more clear and easier these days. And hence why I've been busier than ever in the last 4 years. And where that, I mentioned before, there was more talk and less walk. That has certainly changed in the past few years here. I think, and so making that business case is, there are drivers, there are pressures from, like the one Victoria mentioned, even your own employees are asking for you to perform more sustainably. And so looking to improve your brand reputation, seeing where you can gain a competitive advantage and to remain competitive, reduce your operating costs from implementing energy efficiency measures. And there's just so much opportunity to embark on here in the climate space. And as advisors, we always will, if that isn't there yet, isn't better there yet, or if you're needing support to continue to make the case to your leadership, we're there to lend our hand, do these benchmarking assessments, provide the ongoing education on these ever evolving frameworks, such as, always the latest and greatest from the Science Based Target Initiative in this case. And so from there too, though, you can have that internal buy-in, have it from the top, but also making sure you do have that cross-functional support. Sustainability isn't a one-stop shop, isn't just, your greenhouse gas emissions come from throughout your value chain. They are upstream, they are from your operations, they are downstream. You need to make sure that, a sustainability team, and hopefully it's a team, not just an individual, but, the sustainability team could be leading the charge, managing the overarching sustainability initiatives, but really making sure you have that broader support and that this is just I'll say it again, but embedded into your organization. You need to bring in procurement and facilities and fleet staff and bring in folks from products. It really does take a village. And so having everybody aligned to work on sustainability. And we've been so fortunate too in our partnership with BMS, where we have great partners with George, who gets to help us and keep us closely connected to folks in your procurement and logistics team. We have Zach, who gets to help us with facilities. I think previously came, as a facility staff himself. So making sure that we as the advisors are also connected to the people we need to be connected to, so that they can go and do that internal alignment, spread that internal alignment across our organization has been really valuable and really important. And then lastly, I want to touch on a commitment to getting started and to making continuous improvement. This can seem really daunting because it is daunting. The challenge of achieving net zero. How are we going to do so? We can get so bogged down in how are we going to achieve this feat? Where do we get started? That it just is really important to get started. I agree wholeheartedly with Victoria's approach and what Annabelle's mentioned before too about being data driven. So aligning with science, aligning with what the science is telling us what to do is a very defensible strategy. And so getting started there and taking things perhaps in bite-sized pieces, focusing on near-term efforts and taking things one step at a time is much better than not taking any action. The clock is ticking in terms of what we need to do to achieve what the science is telling us we need to do to thwart off the worst effects of climate change. We're already seeing things manifest today and have been. And so wanted to see folks not necessarily get bogged down in trying to work with perfect data or spending the time to, use this phrase, right? But not let perfection be the enemy of the good. And so work with the good, and the strategic data that you have at hand, and get going and know that you will learn by doing. You will course correct as needed, but to not let the sheer daunting nature of this task perhaps intimidate you and keep you from getting going.
Well, thank you, Trevor. Thanks for sharing that. And I saw a question came through on the chat, and that reminds me to remind all of you, please do submit any questions that you have for us, and we'll be happy to get to them. So maybe we jump to James's question. So James Maloney asks, he says, curious how BMS is thinking about reducing supply chain emissions. So talk about something that can be daunting from a data perspective and things there. But yeah, Victoria, are you able to share a little bit about how BMS is thinking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We started 2 years ago capturing and then disclosing and third-party verifying 7 categories of our Scope 3 emissions. Again, building the data. There's a lot of continuous improvement, a lot of, I'll call them siloed activities, but we needed something that could pull what I think of as like the thread through the tapestry. That's, say, our manufacturing organization and procurement. They're very critical to work integrated with, as Trevor said. But we needed some data as an anchor point, and I think of them as like mile markers in the road on this journey. For supply chain emissions, that's a really complex question, and I'll break it down a bit. In our Scope 3 emissions are 82% of our total footprint. More than many, not as much as some other sectors, but that's average. 80 to 85% is average. It's not normal for the pharmaceutical industry. And of those 82%, 80% falls into purchase goods and services and capital goods. And we have 15,000-ish suppliers. The approach that everyone follows, you kind of have 2 choices. You can do absolute contraction from a science-based target perspective. You can do absolute contraction, which just means beat them down, get it, force them and put them on a short notice. You're in or you're out, right? Or engagement. And of course, we want to do supplier engagement. We want to build on the relationships that we have with our suppliers. Our procurement team has worked hard on that over the last 10, 15 years. As part of our culture for supplier partnerships. And sustainability for us, decarbonization, shouldn't be any different in that building upon those relationships. But thinking about hitting 15,000 suppliers is overwhelming. So we look at the data and really did a lot of deep analytics on the data to say that, to find that we could narrow down the top 67% of the emissions were coming from around 200 suppliers. And then we can say, well, of those suppliers who have goals and targets, we start to then bucket them into manageable, targeted kind of approaches for who's already in and what do they bring back to us, and those kind of engagements. Who needs a little help on the journey and how can we help them? Who's really got a problem and how do we then figure out how to work with them? So there's direct engagement, there's the indirect engagement where we joined Manufacture 2030. We joined the Energize program that Schneider Electric was running. Of course, we'll do contractual changes, but it's you've got to take a multi-prong approach. We're looking at transportation differently. We're looking through our routes of transportation, not just on a case-by-case basis, but on a more, again, bringing the more sophisticated analytics into that decision-making. And now this has become a little less daunting that we have cross-functional leaders working together on decision-making, bringing it into when we go to external manufacturing, talking, looking for the sustainability attributes in the choices that we make in our supply chain. So we're running a little short on time, and I'll leave it at that. But it is really about looking at the opportunities and meeting people where they are and engaging them with who they are, while really being communicative about what our needs are and how they're helping a supplier or our supply chain address their needs helps everybody. It is the definition of a rising tide lifts all boats.
Oh, I love that. What a perfect way of pushing it. And I like just hearing some of the things there. It's a multifaceted approach, really making sure that you understand and target resources to the areas that you're going to have the greatest impact. But also that customized piece. So looking at opportunities, meeting where they're at. And I kind of heard this like collaboration and communication, which is so key in a successful supply chain decarbonization strategy. So James, go on, Trevor.
If I may too, just quickly build off it too. It was and I love the question and a great response, Victoria, and just want to back up a little bit too with the to how we got there, right? To have those data insights, and so as the advisor and as part of one of our main objectives here is to demystify the process for our clients, right? So demonstrate exactly what it would entail to reduce your supplier emissions or supply chain emissions in this regard too, and how are you going to do so that's in alignment with the science-based target initiative criteria, in alignment with science. And so I think everyone's probably aware, right, a key foundational step is making sure you have a complete greenhouse gas inventory in place, but really the next key step is doing that deep dive understanding of your carbon footprint. And so we call it a hotspot analysis. And so really diving in to understand, get that clear picture of where your emissions are coming from or who your emissions are coming from, so you could prioritize and focus your efforts accordingly. And so with the supply chain example specifically here, right, that Victoria was touching on, you're really able to see so often is the case that 80-20 rule, or really even this case, like a 95-5 rule, is that 95% of your supply chain emissions are probably coming from 5% of your suppliers, if not even less than that. And so it really helps you. It makes it all more manageable. Yes, it's still going to be a lot of work and effort, but going from 15,000 suppliers to 200 suppliers is obviously it's going to be much more up for that task. It's going to be one that is more realistic, more feasible than certainly trying to get an additional 14,800 suppliers involved as well. And so that hotspot analysis is the numbers speak volumes when you're able to do those type of deep insights into that, getting that clear understanding of your footprint.
I love that. Building off Victoria, your rising sea raises all boats. It ties to don't boil the ocean at the same time.
No, it's true, because we get one. I want to say time is running out, right? And we kind of get one shot in each of probably our careers to influence how our companies are going to make these changes. And we want to bring the best ideas and the best recommendations forward. So we're setting up the next generation and for success, and giving them the best platform on which they can build. And it's just, this becomes just an ongoing, I think one of those, like when I interviewed for this job, my first response was I wasn't really 100% sure what corporate sustainability was all about. But in all the interview conversations and the job description, to me, it sounded like the biggest change management project we were all going to face and in our lifetimes. And if we approach it from building change agents, from making informed, focused decisions that drive forward progress, we don't have to boil the ocean, but we don't want to drown by throwing everybody in the pool and no one knows how to swim, or is there even water? And then we've just dropped people into an empty pool. So it's having a plan, taking the time to develop a plan and to have data behind that plan. Then you can, as Trevor was saying, you can react, you can respond, you can adjust. We're not going to get it right out of the gates. We're not going to be correct. We're going to be good, and we're going to make informed decisions that allow us to make the next round of decisions even better. And that to me is what all of our who work in this space, I was just looking at everyone on the list, we're all trying to move this forward in every way we possibly can. And I think of it as a 360 sphere where we have to approach it from everybody's perspectives. And if we all do that, we can all make everything can change the way it needs to course correct on where we've gotten ourselves today.
Yeah, no, and it absolutely is change management, right? You need to change the way you're doing things so you can survive and thrive in a low carbon economy. That's what we're moving towards here. And so, especially when we're focused on the supply chain again, looking at where you're getting your products and services from, who you're getting them from. Do we need to help, procure renewable electricity on their behalf? Do we need to look to perhaps do business with other suppliers based on changing preferences and are they slowing down our progress? Do we need to invest in R&D so we can help innovate, the upstream supply of the goods and services we're procuring here, all to make sure that we, the BMS in this situation, right, is able to survive and thrive in this low carbon economy. And so it's mitigating your risk and capitalizing on your opportunities to do so.
I'll just wrap up with one quick one that just ties with what Trevor was saying. As we look at our data, there was in last year, and there were a couple of our suppliers that popped up that had an unexpected high emission that given what the nature of their work was, it didn't seem right. And when I think Trevor and George, you spoke to two of these suppliers, and just in less than a half an hour on calls, we're able to understand and help them course correct on how they were doing their calculations. And it wasn't that their emissions were so high, it was how the calculations or how they were giving us the data, the information, and a little bit of education, a little bit of time and effort on our part with suppliers can go a long way. And the reverse is also true. We have suppliers that are more advanced than we are, and we always love to sit down with them and hear their ideas. And we do sustainability roundtables with suppliers to get their feedback as well.
Thanks, Victoria. I can't believe it, but we're pretty much at time already. So that really flew by. If anyone has any unanswered questions, please feel free to still submit them and we'll look to follow up with you individually. I've also posted or pinned, I should say, a link there of a guidance document that talks about how to establish a successful strategy that goes all the way through to implementation and successfully decarbonizing your business. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And for anyone who'll be at Climate Week in a couple of weeks, a few of us, including Victoria and myself, are going to be there. So welcome to get in touch with me if you'd like to meet and discuss anything further. Victoria, I won't volunteer you for that, but you're welcome.
I can share what I can share, and I'm a pretty open book. So happy to talk to anybody and hear what other people have to say.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights here. It's incredibly valuable, especially for those who are looking to learn from others' experiences on how to be successful in this space and achieve the important work that we're all looking to do. So thank you all so much for joining, and I really hope you enjoy the rest of the Verge Net Zero event. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Annabelle. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Green Biz. Thanks, everyone, for joining.